From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10, live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight,
Bimbo Oloyede.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, power outage in Lagos forces Justice James Soho to adjourn case between suspended CBN governor and the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. Supreme Court strikes out case challenging the right of the federal government to collect taxes in Lagos. Nigeria's economy gets more positive ratings as Fitch affirms the country's BB outlook a stable one. And Oscar Pistorius insists his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp did not scream or shout as he grabbed a gun and fired the shots that killed her.
And on business news tonight, NECA's network of entrepreneurial women call for the establishment of microfinance bank strictly for women.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria Football Federation settles rift with Super Eagles chief coach and fulfills its financial obligations to the national team handler.
I'm Linda Kibe, and from Abuja, Amnesty International demands release of man who disappeared after tweeting images of a jailbreak in Abuja.
Now, what's your assessment of the nation's judiciary? Well, keep your thoughts until you've heard from some top lawyers themselves. Two senior lawyers, Mr. Olisa Obakuba and Mr. Gani Adetola Kasim, simply described the standard in the nation's courts as archaic. And this came after a power outage at the Federal High Court Lagos forced the presiding judge to adjourn the suit instituted by the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Malam Lamido Sanusi, seeking to stop the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, FRCN, from investigating his tenure. The court premises was thrown into total darkness as there was no electricity supply from either the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, or about 9 power generators installed in the court. The situation made the parties agree on Thursday, the 17th of April, for hearing. The suspended CBN governor is also seeking an order restraining them and their agents in any form from conducting and continuing any investigation, inquiry, hearing, or proceeding whatsoever.
If you go to a regular ministry, this wouldn't be happening. And that goes to say that the judiciary needs to be properly funded. No one remembers the judiciary. I just hope that in the rebasing of the GDP by Mrs. Sokonjo-Iweala, she would have told us what sector of the budget goes to the judiciary. So that's the problem. We're all disappointed. It's not good for Nigeria in 2014, wishing to be the 20th largest economy in 2020, to have this state of dilapidation. This is a court that can harken back to 1959, not a modern court. The other day the judge was using his a torchlight to read a ruling. But I also will encourage the judges to be more progressive, to be more proactive, not to read rulings, to just deliver them, not to read, so that speed can be attained.
So when the judiciary don't have fund to run the courts, this is what we find out. And of course, the implication is grave. For example, I've just moved and not yet application before the court, irrespective of which an order ought to be drawn up immediately and served on the party affected. But this is almost impossible in the circumstances in which we have found ourselves. So how do you maintain the stream of justice this way? So I think we have to really appeal to the powers that be, those who are in charge of allocation of our resources, to be able to determine their priority properly, to ensure that the system is not allowed to grant to system to halt.
And also today, a suit filed by the Lagos State government challenging the power of the federal government to assess and collect taxes on the supply of all goods and services within its jurisdiction was struck out by the Apex Court. Delivering judgment on the suit, Justice Datijo Mohammed, leading a full panel of the Apex Court, upheld the preliminary objection filed by the federal government and dismissed the suit on the ground that the court lacks the jurisdiction to entertain it. Lagos State had approached the Apex Court seeking a declaration of the court to abolish the Value Added Tax Act, which it said infringed on its power to assess and collect taxes on the supply of goods and services within its territory.
In 2008, the Lagos State government approached the Apex Court to seek a declaration of a court to abolish the Value Added Tax Act, which it said infringed on its power to assess and collect taxes on the supply of goods and services within the state. The Attorney General of Lagos State, Adebaye, in his brief of argument, asked the Supreme Court to nullify the Value Added Tax Act and grant its relief, which includes a declaration that the Value Added Tax Act is outside the legislative competence of a National Assembly and is therefore unconstitutional, null and void. However, in a notice of preliminary objection filed by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, the federal government challenged the competence of the plaintiff's action, contending that the action relates to acts of a federal agency and cannot therefore form the basis for invoking the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. But in a unanimous decision of the Apex Court, Justice Datijo Mohammed struck out the suit on the ground that the court lacks jurisdiction to entertain the suit. The court also held that the suit is an abuse of court process. The Attorney General said the verdict of the court will be studied.
We will go and look at our options and take a decision as to what next to do. Suffice to say that, this is the final court. If the court says it cannot hear the case, we will look for remedy elsewhere. It's as simple as that. But it's a new angle in our jurisprudence. So I must confess that I've had things here today that I never considered to be the case. But this is the Supreme Court, and whatever it says is law.
Lawyer to the federal government, Adedara Adedeji, applauded the Apex Court for upholding its preliminary objection by dismissing the suit filed by the Lagos State government.
The Supreme Court has just given a landmark decision now. As regards the matter is centered about whether the Lagos State government, can collect tax in respect of goods supplied in Lagos State. And on behalf of the first defendant, we filed a preliminary objection, and the preliminary objection is centered on the fact that the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction on this matter because the matter revolves around an agency of the federal government and the Lagos State government.
Although the suit has been struck out, there are indications that the last may not have been heard on the matter.
Well, to discuss this issue further, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by Mr. Osahon Ihenya, a solicitor of the Supreme Court. You're welcome to the news at 10.
Thank you very much.
Well, what's your opinion about this Supreme Court judgment?
The Supreme Court judgment is largely about value-added tax. I think the Lagos State government has gone to the Supreme Court to challenge the federal government on the issue of charging of value-added tax or collecting value-added tax. I think mainly the preliminary objection is because it's centered around the Lagos State government being in several other courts. Because I read the snippets that is coming from the Supreme Court. They are in several other courts. There's a multiplicity of action on the same issue, the same subject matter, the same parties, and they're in several other courts, and they have gone to the Supreme Court to use the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court as between the state and the federal government. I think mainly what the Supreme Court has said is that this is forum shopping, and it's an abuse of court process for you to be in other courts
and on the same issues, the same subject matter, and come to the Supreme Court on the same point. I think that mainly is what I can garner from the snippets coming out of the Supreme Court.
But at the end of the day, is the Apex Court still not going to be the final arbiter?
That is what they're saying. You see, now Lagos State government, from the snippets I say, because I mean it's just developing, the story is just developing, is that you have Lagos State government in the Federal High Court, probably in a State High Court, and on the same issue, several actions challenging the power of the federal government to collect taxes, value-added tax. And I think the preliminary objection is mainly centered on the fact that you cannot be in all these courts at the same time. What the Lagos State government should have done was to go and withdraw or discontinue the other actions before approaching the Apex Court. I think that mainly is what they are saying. They're saying that Lagos State government is involved in some kind of forum shopping.
All right.
And it's an abuse of court process for you to so do.
So in your opinion then, that is actually the way forward?
Yes, that's the way forward. If you ask me, the way forward for Lagos State government would be for them to discontinue any action they have on that same subject matter between them and the federal government on the same issues that is in any other court. Then they can approach the Supreme Court and ask for the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on the matter between the states and, of course, the federal government.
Now, all this really is about money. It's about revenue.
Precisely.
Now, what would be the implication for the federal government if Lagos State won?
I think the substantive matter is not been handled. It's not been handled now. It's not been decided upon. What is being decided upon is actually the peripheral case of jurisdiction of whether or not you can be in other courts and still come to this court. That is what is being decided. The main issue as to whether there's power for you to collect taxes, a value-added tax, that is what they are talking about. I mean, that is not been decided upon.
And when we are looking at value-added tax, it does appear as if the federal government is enjoying several services, perhaps at the expense of the Lagos State government.
Well, at the expense of the government, I agree with you. Value-added tax is about taxes that has to do with, some, if I must use the word, some lifestyle goods and services. You go to a hotel to drink, you go to a hotel to have your meal, you fly, airlines and all that. Value-added tax is charged. And of course, even now they charge on NEPA, but it's not supposed to be on essentials like drugs. I mean, when you are sick, you go to the hospital, no value-added tax is charged. But on such things, lifestyle goods and services, you go to the hotel and the rest of it, airline charges, and of course, customs and excise charges, port charges, you pay value-added tax on those issues.
All right, thank you very much for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.
I've been talking with Mr. Osahon Iheye, a solicitor of the Supreme Court. Well, in